Imagine this. You've just closed a huge deal, expanding your Texas business into Germany. Or maybe you're adopting a child from overseas. You've got all the crucial paperwork, the certificate of formation, the birth certificate. It all looks perfect. You send it off. And then the whole thing just grinds to a halt. All because some clerk in a foreign capital doesn't recognize a notary's signature from Galveston County. That moment, that's where global bureaucracy throws up this very specific, very rigid hurdle. And that's what we are diving into today. Okay, let's unpack this. We've pulled together a stack of sources on one of the most common international processes, the Texas Apostille Service. Our mission is pretty clear. We want to give you the shortcut to being genuinely well-informed on what can be a really intricate, high-stakes bureaucratic maze.
That's a great place to start because, calling an apostille just a stamp, that really undersells it. It's a declaration. It's a declaration of international legal legitimacy. When you hand that document over abroad, the apostille is basically an international guarantee. It assures the receiving government that the seal, the signature, all of it is genuine and verifiable back in Texas. So today, we're going to distill those steps and, importantly, look at the economics of doing this yourself versus using one of the many services that have popped up to expedite it.
Okay, let's start with the foundation then, the mechanics of authentication. What gives this piece of paper, this apostille, all of its power? Our sources define it as certifying the authenticity of signatures and the official capacity of the people who sign the documents.
Right, but what's fascinating is the why. Why does this system even exist? It's not some new complex government process. It's actually a simplification. It's all rooted in the 1961 Hague Convention. Before 1961, if you wanted to use a Texas birth certificate in, say, France, you had to get it authenticated by the state, then the U.S. State Department, and then take it to the French embassy. I mean, it was prohibitively expensive and incredibly time-consuming, a massive barrier to global commerce.
So the Hague Convention took, 3 or 4 steps and collapsed them into one single internationally recognized certificate?
Precisely. And in Texas, like in other member states, this function is highly centralized. This is crucial. Only the Texas Secretary of State, the SOS, handles all apostilles in the state. No local courthouse, no county clerk. They are the sole certifying authority.
That centralization, I imagine that gives the process its power, but it also creates a kind of a localized choke point, right?
Absolutely. But the payoff is what our sources call the universal apostille. Once the Texas SOS attaches this one certificate, it is accepted in all 120-plus signatory countries of the Hague Convention. That's what allows these global transactions to actually move forward.
That efficiency is obviously key. But you said 120-plus countries. What happens if you're sending your documents to a country that hasn't signed the treaty?
Well, if we connect this to the bigger picture, the process basically reverts to a version of the old system. The sources call it legalization. For a non-Hague country, you still go to the Texas SOS first. But then that document needs another layer of authentication from the U.S. Department of State in D.C., and then finally, acceptance from the embassy of that country. It's multi-layered. It's exactly what the apostille was meant to avoid.
So if you're planning a move or a business deal, step 1 is literally just checking if the destination country is part of the Hague Convention. That changes everything.
It is the critical first step, yes.
Okay, let's transition. Section 2, documents and implications. For someone who's never dealt with this, it can all feel a bit abstract. What are the high-stakes use cases? Why are people even going through this?
The documents really span, the breadth of human life and commerce. On the personal side, it's vital records. So certified copies of birth certificates, marriage licenses, divorce decrees, court judgments. And think about time-sensitive things like international adoptions or securing a foreign pension. A delay of a few weeks can be devastating.
And for businesses, especially for Texas, which is such a hub for global business, what are the needs there?
For a company, this is mandatory groundwork. We're talking certificates of formation, certificates of good standing, all sourced from the SOS Corporation section. Also, any notarized internal document like a power of attorney or company bylaws often needs an apostille to register a branch in, say, Mexico or France.
That makes perfect sense. The foreign government isn't just going to take a Texas CEO's word for it. They need the state to vouch for that signature.
Exactly. And this gets to the DIY process. The sources lay out about 5 steps, and understanding them shows you where the pitfalls are. First, you get a certified copy. Second, if it's a private document, it needs to be properly notarized. Third, you submit it to the Texas SOS office. Fourth, The SOS reviews the authority of the notary or the state official, not the content of the document, just the signature. And finally, the apostille is attached.
That sounds simple enough on paper, but our sources really emphasize that most people who try to do it themselves get rejected or face huge delays. Why is that?
Because the process, while it's sequential, is just unforgivingly rigid. I mean, if your notary's seal is a little illegible, or the stamp overlaps a signature, or if you forgot the prepaid international return shipping label, they just send it back. And if you're trying to meet a merger deadline, having it sent back for a simple clerical error can be an extinction-level event for that timeline.
This is where it gets really interesting. That pain point, the complexity, the time risk, that's what created the whole market for these specialized expert services. Let's get into that.
Right. Services like apostilledepot.com, which we looked at, they exist purely to mitigate that risk. They manage the whole chain, reviewing the document, the physical walk-in to the SOS, and then the direct international shipping. They clear all the hurdles.
So what are the specific claims they're making, especially about speed? Because when you're on a deadline, speed is the only commodity that matters.
The claims all revolve around a radical improvement in turnaround time. The standard state mail-in time can be, 10 days, maybe more. These services claim to offer rush options that just completely undercut that. Some sources even mention the possibility of a same-day SOS turnaround.
Okay, I have to push back on that. A same-day turnaround. I mean, if the Texas SOS is the only choke point, and they have this massive statewide volume, how is that even possible?
That's a really important question. The key advantage they offer isn't that they can skip the line. It's that they know the deadlines, the exact format the SOS wants, and they can physically deliver and pick up documents. It minimizes transit time. They're reducing the risk of a rejection that sets your timeline back 2 weeks. They're basically selling certainty in a very uncertain process.
That makes sense. They're cutting out all the peripheral ways you could fail.
Yeah.
Let's look at the pricing then. The research laid out a few tiers.
Right. They structure it based on speed. The economy package is around $150, so $149.95. That's for non-urgent requests. Delivery is in about 1 to 3 weeks, and it includes the government fee and a document review. So they're managing the DIY risk for you.
And for those high-pressure deadlines where every day counts.
That's the express package. It's priced at $199.95. That's the rush service. And they aim for delivery in 1 to 5 business days using priority mail. It's a big premium over the state's official $15 fee, but again, you're paying to remove risk and inefficiency.
And we should probably mention federal documents. Things like FBI background reports. They go through a whole different process, right?
Yes, they bypass the Texas SOS completely and go straight to the U.S. Department of State. These services offer an FBI reports package for that, same price point, about $200. But because you're dealing with the federal bureaucracy in D.C., the turnaround is much longer. You're looking at 2 to 6 weeks. But for all the packages, the value proposition is the same. You get a tracker and customer support to handle all the questions.
And there's a big caveat here, which is that all these processing times are just estimates. No service can control the mail or the actual speed of the Texas Secretary of State's office.
Precisely. They master the submission process, but the final stamp still depends on the state authority.
Which brings us perfectly to Section 4, critical pitfalls and insider tips.
Yeah.
So for you, listening, you need to know the rules, whether you do it yourself or hire someone, just to make sure your documents are valid in the first place. What's the #1 reason for rejection?
The first failure point's what we already touched on. Misunderstanding the Hague status of the country. You have to verify it on the HCCH database. If you send a document for a standard apostille to the SOS, but the country isn't a member, it's an automatic rejection or a huge delay.
Okay, what about the document itself? Does its age matter?
Document age is a huge one. It catches so many people. The Texas SOS might apostille an old birth certificate, sure, but the receiving country might reject it. Our research showed some countries demand that vital records be issued within the last 6 months, so that certified copy of your marriage license from 20 years ago, it might be dead on arrival. And a third, incredibly common reason for rejection is about copies and notarization. The SOS is authenticating the official signature, not the information on the paper. So you must use original certified copies. A photocopy of a birth certificate, even if it's notarized, will almost always be rejected. And for private documents, like a power of attorney, the notary has to use very, very specific language to meet the state's requirements.
That distinction, that the SOS authenticates the signer, not the fact, that seems to be the key legal concept here.
It truly is. And finally, don't forget the logistics, especially if you're mailing it yourself. If you're using that $15 state service, you have to include fully prepaid shipping labels for the return. And if it's going abroad, you need international labels. Forgetting a tracking number could mean your document just sits in Austin for weeks.
The cost of a few $100s for one of these expert services starts to look like a pretty good insurance policy against months of delay. So wrapping this all up, what does this all mean? The main takeaway here is that international document authentication, specifically the Apostille in Texas, is this highly rigid mandatory process. It's simplified by the Hague Convention, but complicated by unforgiving bureaucracy. And because the stakes are so high, these specialized services are thriving by offering efficiency and risk mitigation that, frankly, the average DIY applicant just often lacks.
And here's a final thought for you to mull over. The entire Apostille system hinges on certifying the authenticity of a local signature. It could be a low-level notary in a county office or the state registrar. What immense legal consequence does that give to that one person? Their signature, once the SOS confirms it, is instantly recognized worldwide. It facilitates transactions and migrations worth millions. It just raises this important question about the localized grassroots integrity that's required to keep the massive gears of global mobility turning smoothly.
An administrative task with worldwide legal power. We all rely on this unseen, rigid bureaucratic infrastructure, whether we're studying abroad or closing a deal. That's it for this deep dive. We hope you feel a lot more informed about the Texas Apostille Maze and maybe, just maybe, a little more appreciative of the next notary you encounter.